Hello everybody. Today we'll be learning about the three branches of government and how a bill becomes a law. So we're going to start out with a little bell ringer activity. I want you to pull out a piece of paper or a note card or something like that and write down everything you know about the three branches of government. This is something that you probably have some previous experience with. I think you guys would have learned the basics of this in around 5th or 6th grade. So take out that piece of paper and write down everything you can remember about it. I'll give you about 3 to 5 minutes to do this. Okay. When you are done with that, just bring it up to the front of class and I'll review it. All right, so let's get started with the lesson. So what are the three branches? The US government is broken up into three different groups to ensure the separations of power. Separation of powers is the division of government responsibilities into distinct branches. In the case of the US government, there are three different branches. This is done to limit any one branch from exercising the core functions of another. The US government is split up into three branches. Those branches are the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch. So we're going to start here by looking at the legislative branch. So the main portion of the legislative branch is Congress, which is made up of two houses. Those are the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives is made up of elected officials called representatives. There are currently 435 members of the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is made up of elected officials. These officials, the amount of officials is based off of the population of the state they are representing. So states with higher populations will have more representatives than states with lower populations. So a state like Ohio would have less members of the House of Representatives than, say, California, which has a higher population than Ohio. Then there is the Senate, which is made up of elected officials called senators. There are currently 100 members of the Senate. The Senate is made up, or there are two senators from each state. So there's an equal amount from each state, and there's 50 states, so 100 members. The legislative branch is in charge of making the laws. Next up, we have the executive branch, the branch that enforces the laws. Consists of the president, the vice president, the cabinet, which is a group of politicians that the president assigns to help with running the country. So that's things like the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Treasury, Attorney General, things like that. And then other federal agencies. So that can be something like the FBI. The president specifically signs laws into effect on the national level. On the state level, it would be like the governor that signs laws into effect. Then we have the judicial branch. They are the branch that interprets the law. So it consists primarily of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is not made up of elected officials. They are made up of judges that the president at the time appoints to be on the Supreme Court. And then they are vetted by the Senate, and the Senate approves the nominee and they become a member of the Supreme Court. This just recently happened where President Biden appointed a new justice to the Supreme Court and the Senate approved her. They also serve lifelong terms. So once they are appointed to the Supreme Court, they will always be on the Supreme Court until either they pass away or they choose not to serve any longer. They can also be impeached, but that does not happen very often. Most of the time, they choose to retire. So they determine whether or not a law is constitutional. So when a new law is brought into effect, they examine it and make sure that the law does not override any of the rights promised to us in the Constitution. So let's just quickly go over the three roles of the three branches. So the legislative branch makes the laws. Congress will basically come up with what they want to be a law, and they will debate it. The executive branch enforces the law. So they are in charge of making sure that the law is being executed correctly and followed by the people that the law applies to. And then the judicial branch interprets the law. So they make sure that the law is constitutional and fits within the Constitution and the rules that we have created for our government. All right, so now we have discussion questions. I'm going to give you these questions, and I want you guys to pair up, maybe in groups of 2 or 3 with other people around you, and I want you to discuss these questions. We will then convene as a class and further discuss, your guys' answers, and we'll just talk about it for a little bit. So we have 2 questions today. The first question is, why is it necessary that the government is broken up into 3 branches? And the second question is, what would happen if it wasn't broken up into 3 branches? Or what could happen, excuse me. So I'll give you guys 5 minutes to discuss this in groups, and then we will move on and talk about it as class. Okay, so let's go over a couple of these questions. So, question 1, why is it necessary that the government is broken up into 3 branches? It is necessary because it makes it so that one political group, Congress or the president or the Supreme Court, cannot control our lawmaking process. So that in that case, the powers are separated, and there is no one ruler or one power that determines the laws that we have. So they kind of create a system of checks and balances with each other, where they can work together and make laws that best suit our nation. So what could happen if it wasn't broken up into 3 branches? In that case, one of the branches could gain essentially ultimate power over our lawmaking process. So say the president wanted to create a law where you can't drive after 9 p.m. for whatever reason he wants to create that. He would not have to have approval from Congress and the Supreme Court to put that law into effect. So he could essentially create whatever law he wanted to, and we would just have to start following it. All right, so now we're going to discuss how a bill becomes a law. This is a little bit of this can be confusing, so we're just going to kind of simplify it here and dumb it down a little bit. So it could be introduced in either house of Congress, but for the sake of this conversation, we'll just say that it's being introduced into the House of Representatives. So the bill is first introduced into the House of Representatives. Ideas for bills can come from within committees, in the House of Representatives or the Senate, and they could just come up with an idea, say, whatever, legalize sports gambling, or because representatives are elected officials and they're supposed to represent the ideas of the people of who they are representing. The ideas can come from average citizens of the United States, who talk to their representative about an issue. The bill is then reviewed and examined in Congress. So they'll have committees, they'll have hearings where they go over and create what they assume, what they think the law will be. So they'll come up with guidelines for for the rules of the bill and law. Then the House or the Senate will vote on the bill. So they'll have a vote, and whoever wants this law to exist will vote yes. Whoever doesn't, no. If the majority is yes, the bill then moves on to the other house, in this case the Senate. The Senate will then do the same thing that the House did, and they will review and examine the bill. They'll vote on it, and if they approve it, it is then sent to the President. The President then chooses to sign or veto the bill. If vetoed, the bill gets sent back to Congress for further examination and rewriting. So this would be like if the bill was placed on the President's desk and he was like, I don't like how this is worded, what this entails, I'm not going to sign it. So Congress then has a chance to examine it again and rewrite it and change it in order to seek approval by the President. If the President gets the bill and he likes it, he will then sign it and it will become the law. There is a case where the bill can be vetoed and Congress can just like have it signed and it becomes a law anyway, but that rarely ever happens. And then the whole time, I forgot to mention this, but the whole time the Supreme Court, even after it becomes a law, is making sure that it is constitutional. So here's a real world example. Recently, the Senate has approved a bill which would make daylight savings permanent, which means we would no longer switch clocks. It would just be this, forward and backwards. Like it would just be the time it is all the time. The bill is currently being examined by the House of Representatives. If the House approves the bill, it will be sent to President Biden. If the House doesn't approve the bill, it will be sent back to the Senate, and they can, just as the President can, if it's vetoed, rewrite it and then send it to the House again and see if they approve it. President Biden then has the choice to sign or veto the bill. If he signs the bill, it becomes permanent, no more daylight savings. If he vetoes, it goes back to Congress and the cycle starts over again. All right, so I'm just going to do a quick pause and ask if anybody has any questions. Okay. And then tonight there will be an online quiz available on Google Classroom covering the material we learned. It's short, like 5 questions. All right, thank you guys.